shall we move on to the round that was in round number 11? Now, difficult round, I think. Don't look at the football tips, for starters. Lots of badness happened there.
Jesse, I tell you what, my tipping this year is going great guns all over the place. I think I'm dead last by about 12 or 13 tips in my work competition. I did miss a week, but that doesn't make up for the other. Doesn't make up for the other 7 or 8.
Was the week opening round where there was 2 games?
No, okay. No. There is a week I got 1 in there though, and 1 week, and our competition is very strict. You miss your tips, no points.
Yeah. Oh,
no points.
Oh, that's not good.
Cutthroat.
That's very strict.
But no, Jesse, we've got a few games to go through this week before we start jumping into the bye rounds, which are coming up in round 12. But let us know your thoughts on the games down below as well if you're on YouTube. And as always, at CM_perfect_AFL on Insta. And for where you're listening to it now on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, or Amazon. We love that. But we're going to start talking about some games because we have 9 to get through. And here we go. Starting from Thursday night, Jesse, May 22nd at Kahumba. Geelong, 20 goals, 7 behinds, 127, defeating the Bulldogs 16-17, 113. A high-scoring affair that I think the Dogs might have wished they could kick a bit straighter, Jesse.
Yeah, it's a long V-line train back to Footscray when you've seen your team kick 17 points and lose the game that you really probably should have won. Let's start with the positives for the Doggies because I think they're a really good side. I think this is a top 4 side that I probably didn't have. I didn't have at the start of the season. They've been a real positive in this season. I think Luke Beveridge has got to be given a lot of credit for this because I think Beveridge has been under siege, I think, a fair bit for not getting the most out of this list in the last kind of five or so years. Certainly around COVID and beyond, I think there's been disappointment that they haven't really kicked on. There was obviously 2021 with the grand final. They were in it until they weren't. And they bungled out against Fremantle in 22 in an elimination final. They're up by 5 goals in quarter time. They've had a tough run.
I remember that game.
I remember
that game.
I remember Freddie.
Freddie. That was insane. Anyway.
Reminiscing because we have nothing else to hold on to. The last time I was happy as a Fremantle supporter. Look, let's just focus though on the fact that the Dogs, at the end of the day, they lost a game to a very good side, but it's a game they could have won. And I think this list is experienced enough. Now, if this is a team like Gold Coast, I may be a bit more concerned for the losing side. But the guys like Bont, Liberatore, even guys like English, like your veteran presences in the team, this is water off a duck's back for them. They'll be disappointed to have lost. Sure, I'm not suggesting they wouldn't be.
Sure.
But they can dust themselves up and come back up from this. And Geelong, for all the Dogs' poor accuracy, Geelong were freakishly accurate too.
Well, this is what I was going to mention. It's one of Geelong's massive strengths. Like their ability to score accurately is second to none in the competition, I would say. They are just freaks at it. And you know that if they're in front of goals, I mean, their forward line is just insanely good. And this is one of those games where they were potentially outplayed for large stretches of this match. Not to say they didn't play well because it was just a cracking game between 2 good sides. But man, they make those chances count. It's unreal. Like how 10 behinds is a huge margin in the behind column anyway. Under 10 behinds in an entire game when you're kicking 20 is mental. It's insane. On a side note, just before we move on to the next game, we talk about the Dogs and being a top 4 possibility. We don't speak about well, actually, before this segue, is there anything else you want to add about this game?
Well, I don't know where your segue is going, so I do have a point to make, but I don't know if it's going to intersect your segue. So you go, and I'll see if it doesn't.
The segue will go to the next game.
Okay,
so you better get your point in now.
For the fact that I say the Dogs are top 4 contenders, their win-loss record doesn't reflect it.
That was going to be my segue, Jesse. Well done.
You really screwed the pitch there, then. Do your segue.
That's okay. Same amount of wins on the season as a team that played Friday night. And that
Richmond have won that many games?
I know.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Dreamtime at the G. Essendon 11-15, 81. The Tigers 8-10, 58. in front of 76,051. Very good crowd coming out for the Dreamtime at the G game. But
you've got this, don't you?
I've got this. What have you got? Jesse has put his eye mask on. He's gone to sleep.
I'm not doing this game. This is yours to do. I sat through this on my bloody birthday. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Are you kidding me?
Look, Dreamtime at the G is obviously a very important game of the calendar. It's a massive celebration of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. But yeah, the game itself did not live up, unfortunately, to that hype in any capacity. This is one of those games where, I too watched it in the sense that it was on the television while I was trying to distract myself doing other things, because it wasn't engrossing. Richmond have come off the back of two very exciting, hard-fought games, against people around them on the ladder, like down the bottom, your Eagles and your Norths. I was hoping and I'm praying, and we both tipped the Tigers because based on that form and those games, you thought, you know what, they can give Essendon an absolute crack here. And unfortunately, they just stopped, as the younger teams tend to do. The last quarter or so, they kind of ran out of gas, and the Bombers took full advantage, to their credit, and walked away. Martin was fantastic. He's been putting on a good season. But on a side note, yes, they're on the same amount of wins as the Dogs, but their injury list just keeps mounting and mounting and mounting, and I'm not entirely sure their draw gets any easier.
They've had a pretty generous draw.
They've had a generous draw.
I mean, they've played the three bottom sides already.
Yep.
They've played the four bottom sides. To be fair, I don't think Port was obviously meant to be down this low, but they've played the four bottom sides.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really easy way to inflate your win-loss column. And I mean, they've barely beaten at least two of those.
Mm. So, yeah, we don't want to equate the Bulldogs and Essendon because they're obviously both in very
look what happened
realms.
when they played.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
That's the easiest way to quantify the difference between the Western Bulldogs and the Essendon Football Club. They're not even close. It would be a Greek tragedy if this Essendon team made the finals at the expense of anyone.
Yes, I tend to agree. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we'll get the real Essendon, and obviously now losing, I think, 6 or 7 players who are all over 190 centimetres. I guess they'll have no choice but to play Isaac Kako.
Person in their team.
Isaac Kako in the rock, Jesse.
Well, Kako's in a bit of form jeopardy at the moment. He started the season really well, but he's been one of the big sliders, I think, for the Dons so far this season. He's always looked dangerous, but he's not doing anything at the moment, which is hard for one of those live wire players. When he's not getting your hands on the ball, it's very difficult to influence the game. First
year player, Jesse. He'll obviously learn a lot from this season, but yeah, it's we had the same thing about Murphy Reid for the Dockers a few weeks ago, and look what he's been able to turn around pretty quick. So, look, hopefully he can, because we always like seeing the young guns do well. Let's move on, Jesse, to the next game. Let's tick over into Saturday. Carlton 12-10-82, going down to the Greater Western Sydney Giants 17-8-110. What was Toby Green's? Was it 200th, 250th?
250th. And good for Toby too, because he's obviously got a reputation, but he's one of the guys that has stuck by this club through thick and thin. He could have easily taken big offers to go elsewhere, but he is a Giant through and through. And, you know, you talk about club legends who don't get flags. He is starting to look like becoming one of the Giants, I fear, for Toby. Yep.
The guy on my shirt.
Yep.
My guy on my shirt. Old Pav. Oh, poor guy. But he was good though, wasn't he? He was, I think, best on ground by a long way. Kicked a few goals, had a lot of touches. Can't say no to that. Obviously accurate as well. We can't talk about Geelong being accurate without saying 17-8 as not being a great score as well. This was a game we both tipped Carlton, and because we just didn't know where the Giants were at. And it was good to see them come out of that slump a little bit, because they've been down at the doldrums for the last, month or so. So to see them turn around and get a bit of that form back that we all know that they do have and do possess was nice to see. And, I mean, Carlton. Carlton
are in trouble. And Michael Voss is in big trouble too.
Oh.
Looking at, realistically, you're 4-7. I think they've had an appalling win-loss record in their last 30 games. It's I think it's single-digit wins in that last. It's something very low. They're really pushing down in that win-loss record over their last 30-ish games or 25-ish games. They are not in any kind of form. They've won 2 of the last 5, and it feels like not long ago, the narrative was Carlton starting to turn around.
Yep.
But it's like they've managed to avoid the big iceberg in front of their Titanic, and all of a sudden, that's a volcano, and it's exploding, and, well, if we turn back, it's going to be the iceberg, so I'll know. That's what it genuinely looks like for Carlton at the moment. They look ineffective. I think Colonel Mackay, when they play, I don't think it works. I actually think they need to be brave and make the call to get rid of one. Because these are two alpha dogs, and you can't have two alpha dogs in the same forward line. It's the reason that Justin Longmuir and Kepler Bradley got good careers at Fremantle, because they weren't getting in Pav's way.
Yeah.
Now, having two alpha dogs looks great on paper, but I can't really think of many times in recent history where it's worked. If Adelaide can buck the trend with almost that three-headed dog from Harry Potter, or four-headed...
The Cerberus. It's the Cerberus, Jesse.
It's a very snarly, Thilthorpe-looking monster. It's got very long kicks too. Anyway, I didn't know where that was going. I get the sense this doesn't work. And this is maybe a deep dive we can do when Carlton get flogged, and I don't think that'll be too far away, looking at how they're going at the moment. I mean, they've got Essendon in the next game, so that could be a great advertisement for 40 Winks. Talk about sponsors free to air. I would slap my logo all over that game, as hard as you can. Maybe even put a mattress out for the goal umpires so they can just recline and get a lazy boy for the boundary umpires. Because honestly, like that, if you want to talk about teams that are boring and that I actually don't want to watch anymore, it's Carlton and Essendon, which is a shame because they're enormous football clubs. Their supporters deserve better.
Yeah.
But they just through terrible list management over the last 5-10 years, we get this.
Carlton are one of those maybe teams. Like, you don't know which one's going to turn up each week.
Yeah.
But it seems to be the case of how long has that been going on for now, though? And how long can they put up with that?
Well, it's been going on since 2011 when they rocketed to that prelim.
Yeah. And then what since then? They're starved, Jesse. Starved.
Hey, they had Dan Gorringe once, and everyone seems to love Dan Gorringe. I feel like I go crazy every time I say, I actually don't think he's particularly funny, because everyone looks at me like I'm really strange.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Hey, look, humor's objective, Jesse. It's okay.
It's true. I mean, I laugh at my own jokes, so I'm probably not the best judge of comedy.
That's actually very, very true. Nothing more to say about this game, Jesse? Shall we move on?
Please move on. Please.
Going to the MCG where the Hawks 8-12-60 go down to the Lions 14-9-93 in front of 50, or just shy of 58,000. Good to see the Lions bounce back from their couple of weeks of, mediocrity to show what they, and you said, to be fair to you, in the Just the Tips episode last week, that the Lions do play the MCG very well, but I think is it time to focus on the Hawks a little bit? They've had a couple of weeks where, they've not performed probably up to the standards, the lofty standards that we've set them, Jesse, lofty standards that we hold them to. What was your thoughts on this one?
I don't agree, Liam. They were poor. They were poor. They were disappointing, I think, on Saturday against the Lions. But the week before, they've lost to the Suns by 8 points on the Gold Coast. Is that not the hardest game in the fixture at the moment?
It is. Yes,
I'm quite happy to just give them. They won their 3 prior coming in. I mean, the teams around them, they're the worst percentage-wise of the teams on 7 and 4, but they're only off 4th by percentage at the moment. Mm-hmm. I think they're a better side than Adelaide. I think they're a better side than Geelong. It's not unreasonable. I mean, yes, if they start losing more games, but they've lost to 2nd and 3rd.
I know.
Gold Coast in Darwin is formidable. And if you're ever going to get an interstate team that plays well at the G, it's Brisbane.
Correct. Yeah. The reason I chucked that at you is because there was some of the rhetoric that
people really want Hawthorn to fail. People are desperate for Hawthorn to fail. And look, I get it because I don't really want to see another Hawthorn dynasty a decade after I just sat through one. But I do find the narrative a little bit exhausting. Just because a team has personality doesn't mean that it's the end of society, that they get a free kick or that someone posted a TikTok.
They get so many free kicks though, Jesse. Haven't you seen the differentials? Free kick Hawthorn. It's back for season 2025.
Well, I'm sure we can get some great Facebook memes because that's one platform that will never die with a demographic that likes to complain about umpiring. Talking players, though. Lachie Neale, I think up there for one of his best games this season. He probably hasn't had a great year. So he's taken more of that veteran backseat role that Zorko has taken in a different position on the ground for the Lions previously. I think he's doing a really good job in that space. And keep in mind, the Lions have a really exciting young midfield too. So getting Neale to transition now to the betterment of the Ashcrofts, I think that's a big positive. The Hawks, they were in this game. They were in this game. I know it kind of unraveled for them, but they were in this game. So they'll be disappointed. But for them, big game against Collingwood. They won't want to lose 3 on the bounce. Collingwood are flying.
They are.
But weirdly, if as long as the game is competitive and it genuinely is a close game, I think you can stomach a 3rd loss in a row.
Well, especially because the caliber of the competition.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Because that is literally 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in as many weeks.
That's rough. That's very rough. But, it battles you. It hardens you. Battle hardens you. What am I trying to say? No, me either. That's pretty common. Anything else with this one, Jesse, before we move on to the next game? Speaking of the Pies. North 9-9-63 defeated by these are the Crows. The Magpies 15-18, 100.
They're both birds that have black feathers. So
here's the problem. I looked at the graphic and just went Crows in my head. It's the end of a work.
Do you know how teams work? Not Microsoft football.
I'm on Microsoft Teams all day. That's where I've gone wrong, Jesse. That's where I've gone wrong. I've confused my teams. 40,000 at Marvel, which is actually not too bad for a North game. Now, actually, before we jump into this game, my understanding is that they were expecting massive crowds for this double header at Marvel, which was this round, I believe.
Yes.
Did they achieve? What was the other game?
The other game
was the Carlton.
Yes.
Oh, they did. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, kind of.
Were they expecting 75 for the entire day?
I think, because Marvel holds 60, so
yep,
you're talking 75. I mean, that's okay, but you're also hobbling them by putting Carlton and North there,
and also probably hobbling by having a game at the MCG halfway through as well.
Yeah, look, weird idea.
Yeah, weird idea. Anyway, back to the game. Collingwood obviously just too good for North, who were kind of kept in it because
they were plucky.
But as is the case. The Magpies just ran away with it in the 3rd and 4th. Probably just the 4th, to be honest. 8 goal to 1 final term won't hurt that. Jesse, did you have a chance to watch this one?
Not live. What I will say from what I've gathered though from subsequent viewing is North. It's there for North, and I actually think they play Collingwood very well. I know it ended quite meekly for them, but I think that they're developing quite well. I don't know with North because it's really hard to benchmark them as a KPI team this season because they're not going to make finals. We said we want to see them get better, but this margin, that's not saying necessarily better, but yet they're playing better football, yet they only have 10 premiership points from 11 games. So it's a really difficult spot for North at the moment. I said a couple of weeks ago, I don't know when the pressure started at Alistair Clarkson. I think he's managed to fight that off.
Yeah.
For now. But I don't know with this side. They've got West Coast next in their calendar. I think buys interfere with their upcoming schedule, as it does for everyone. So I think they've got that to look forward to. What I will say, though, about North, they've scored more points this season than West Coast, Richmond, Port, Essendon. So they are able to score.
Yeah.
Defensively, they've been very poor. They've been the 2nd worst side in the competition, and that is costing them games.
Sure.
But for a team that's down in 17th to be the 14th best scoring team in the competition, there's opportunity there. Essendon, on the other hand, to be the 16th best scoring team and sitting in 10th, I think shows a little bit how fortunate they've been with their draw to start the season.
Fair shout. Anything really to go over? I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion, this one. So I think we should move on, shall we?
Let's.
Huzzah! Freo 15-10, 100. Glad we got the century. Defeating, I should do this properly. Waliel up 15-10-100, defeating Yatapulti 7-9-51. Apologies if I missed any other teams. Kawana I missed. My apologies. It's still Sir Doug Nicholls round after all. Wet conditions, slippery conditions, still got to 100. That's pretty good. That's a win for the Dockers. Look,
we need to talk Port.
We need to talk Port. I think so. I think we talk Freo enough. I think as an aside, a good game by the boys. Thank you very much.
No, we will talk about Waliel, but we need to talk Yatapulti properly, because we often do just brush over the opposition so I can yell a lot.
You stopped me this time. Thank you, Jesse. But usually I do go first.
We need to talk Yatapulti here, because they've got to make the call now. Ken Hinkley cannot continue the coach of the football club. That is the beginning and the end of this conversation. It is very clear that there is a disconnect now between Ken Hinkley and the playing group. And what's worse is you've got to re-sign Butters and Bergman. And if these results continue and you look like being a bottom four side with limited upside in terms of your list profile, I mean, guys like Butters, Rosé, Georgiades, they're hitting their peaks.
Yeah.
Right. They are hitting their peaks in terms of age. So we're expecting to see them right now be close to their final form in terms of quality, which is a problem because you look at who's coming through. I mean, Jace Burgoyne has been a massive improver this season, but that's the end of that list, isn't it? Ollie Lords looked okay at times, but I don't think there's a consistent player in there. But Port is the home of inconsistent forwards. This is defensively. They invested so much on Aaliyah, Zerk Thatcher getting this defense sorted, and they just were terrible.
Yeah.
They just don't look like a team that knows how to defend.
Well, I'm not too sure it was in part because a lot of our smalls were running rampant, and obviously they're very big people.
Yes.
Especially Aaliyah. He's a monster. But it's hard to disagree because Port, for all intents and purposes, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we had them around that 8th mark-ish this year.
I had them a bit higher. I think I had them close to top 4, if not in there. Because this list is hitting this peak.
Yeah. So realistically, you break all that down, and where does the buck stop? It kind of stops with their current situation in the coach's box. I agree with you, Jesse. I think it's time to just cut the cord, change it over, see what happens for the rest of the season. I think now, what are they, 4-7? I think.
Yeah, they're 4-7.
That's a long road home for any team. So, cut your losses. Get old Joshy in.
I mean, they've lost their last 4.
Yes, yeah, they're not in good form. They're not in good shape.
Their last win was against North, and they won that by 10 points.
Yeah, something good. Something good for the Power.
So actually, let's go through this. So in their last month, lost by 90 points against the Dogs in Ballarat.
Mm. Yep.
Showdown lost by a goal. Lost by 70 odd points to Geelong at home, and then lose to a pretty middling Waliel upside by 50 points at Optus, which is a ground they usually play pretty well.
Yeah.
This is a long way back for Yatapulti.
Yeah.
It's
pretty dire. It's pretty dire.
Let's run through Waliel. Great to see them handle the wet weather conditions with aplomb. Luke Jackson, he's your number 1 ruckman. Sean Darcy is available for selection this week, as is Nat Fyfe. Neither of these guys can be back in the team. This right now, Waliel can still make the finals. If I see either one of those in the team sheet this week, I will honestly think that we don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And it's just a conscious choice that we don't want to play finals because it's too scary.
We have ready-made people to come back in too for the people who we've lost. Obviously, we've got lost Cooper Simpson for 10 weeks, something like that.
See, I don't think he'll get back in the team.
No, unfortunately,
because you'll have to build him back through the waffle. By that time, you're either end of the season or into a finals campaign if you're good enough.
Yep.
I don't think he'll be back. Aish had 28 touches off half-back. I think 6 intercept marks for Peel on the weekend. He's an automatic for Simpson. I would be very confused if H isn't back in this team. Pearce, look, there's a big narrative coming out of the football club at the moment that this suspension is egregious. I don't know if I agree because this has been... I know, look, I don't agree with punishing the result over the action. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's what's happened all season. So correct. I don't really understand why the coach and a senior player going to the media and peddling this narrative of this is not a fair suspension when it is fair. You may not want to go 40 Ks in a school zone because you don't like children, but you have to. Yep. That is the rule, or the way the rule is interpreted is you must be under this speed. So we have an interpretation now. It may not be one that you agree with, but it is interpretation. I don't like it. I don't like the way Luke Ryan and Justin Lomeu have come out this week and spat the dummy over this. And we don't know what the outcome is going to be at the trophy. I think that's happening as we record.
Yep.
But for Lomeu to be saying that he expects Pearce to be playing on the weekend, like, that's a bizarre thing to say to the media. And to me, it smacks of what we've always said about Justin Lomeu, which is his unwillingness to adapt and his unwillingness to accept that everything isn't in his perfect footballing world.
Yeah.
Other things to quickly talk about. Isaiah Dudley. I mean, yes. What a find. What a find. Murphy Reid was excellent. Shea Bolton, he's not going to win a Doig because there's better players week in, week out. But if you were to say to me, Fremantle is going to lose their most valuable player, who are you blocking from being traded? I'm putting it as Shea Bolton.
Yeah.
You're not taking Shea Bolton.
It didn't have many touches on the weekend, I don't believe, but it's not about the touches all the time. I know it's a huge part of the game and the statistics of that, and most of your Brownlows and whatnot are determined by just who gets the most touches of the ball, no matter how good or bad they are. But it's his presence. His presence is undeniable.
His work rate is so much better than people give him credit for too. I know there was a big criticism coming out of Richmond as his work rate. I don't know whether he was just given up at the Tigers or what the situation was there, but he is working and putting his best foot forward. So a positive for Wally Love. Really disappointing for Yatapulti. They have a long way back. They've got the Giants. That's probably going to be 5 in a row in the losing column based on how they're going. Freo have the Suns on the Gold Coast, which means a trip to the lovely Coolangatta Airport. We will see how that transpires. Shall we move on to Splendid Sunday? Although it wasn't splendid for Warwick Marawalim because the wheels fell off a little bit towards the end here. What happened?
Yeah, they did a little bit. Kawana 19-14, 128. I hadn't even got to Kawana yet. Fantastic. And Wanich Murray 8-14, 62.
Can I complain about something straight off the bat?
Of course you can.
Baker should have gotten a week.
Baker should have gotten a week. Yeah. I didn't see this happen. What happened, Jesse?
So, 3 minutes left in the game, if that? Baker lays a tackle. I can't remember who it was on. Lays a tackle and proceeds to shove the Adelaide player's head as hard as he can into the ground after the tackle action is completed. It's stupid. And I would say the same thing for any other club or any other player. If a Fremantle player did that, I'd be saying give him a week. Probably say give him 2. I'd give him an internal club suspension because it's just stupid. It's just ridiculous. He got a fine for it, but just a dumb thing to do in the game. You're down by 10 goals.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're annoyed, but what is that going to actually achieve?
No, I didn't see that, but that's very silly. That's very silly. And he should know better. He's obviously one of their older heads around the trap, so he should be doing setting a better example, I would say. But it's interesting because I was about to say with Alex Pearce before, it's consistency, right? They've done that the entire season. If they were going to be serious about this head-high contact and stuff, then if something like that's happened, it's got to get something, at least a look. Again, Eagles competitive for half the game, then disastrously not in the second half. Waterman is out for the season, which is a massive loss, huge loss for them as well.
Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a behind-the-scenes shout out here, Lynn, because you did all the best in the takeaways this week. So great job to you for doing that. I know it's not always the easiest one to pick out, especially when you're kind of going through the hards, but you've nailed this game. You've absolutely nailed your best here. Tyler Brockman has come on leaps and bounds from where he was last season, and there were West Coast fans, I think, getting a little bit agitated. Oh, it's another dud, another useless recruit who's just not very good. But he is night and day compared to where he was last season. Elijah Hewitt as well. I know that's different. He's a draft pick, but he's also really escalated up the chain too. I like what McQualter's doing because he's not afraid to do different things in the midfield. Persist with him would be my thoughts to
Persist
West Coast.
with McQualter.
Because I think unlike the Fremantle head coach, McQualter actually understands the game. and can do things that indicate that he understands the game rather than doing nothing and being bad. But McQualter, I think, does a really good job at assessing where the game situation is. And look, he's got to turn, chicken poo into chicken puree with this team at times down at West Coast. They're not going to win more than 3 games this season. I almost went 4, but honestly, I struggle to say it. But this is the start of something. There's some good WA draft picks. They've got a decent NGA prospect. This is, I think, Wes Wally, his name is. He's definitely a part of the Wally family.
Wally?
Wes. But yes, Wes. Okay. The jokes are probably, unfortunately, going to write themselves. Yeah. But he is a member of the Wally family, who's West Coast NGA prospect. I think he's looking really promising for Subiaco. Fred Rodriguez is a highly touted WA prospect. Now, West Coast will likely have a very high draft pick this year. It's not a good draft, so it might be one of those ones where you look to trade down and protect WA talent and prioritise WA talent. So potentially really exciting opportunity for West Coast moving forward with McQualter. Kawana, I mean, they're just a better side than Wallish Marawa at the moment. That is the beginning end of it. Dawson, Michelle Rankin. I love this team. I really think this is an exciting team. No Tex Walker either as a late out. There was a couple of late outs that went on throughout the week, but Tex was one of the big late outs of the round. They get Sydney next week. I think they could absolutely obliterate the Swans. And we'll talk about them next because we do have a little bit to talk about. Is it Sydney we talk about next or are they after? They are next. Perfect. Look at that for a segue. Sunday games just all merge into one because they're back to back to back.
And overlap and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's tough. Nam, 19-17, 131, defeating the Swans 12-6, 78 in front of 38,000. 520 at the G. Now, I know this is probably happening. This has happened for a few weeks, but we've spoken about Sydney's forward pressure, forward or lack thereof, their forward firepower. I thought seeing old mate Flip, what's his name? Oh, I've just gone completely blank on him. I keep the name Errol Gould's in my head. It's not him. He played for us for a bit.
Joel Hamling.
Thank you. Wow. I was doing so well.
I wish Errol Gould played for us for a bit. I actually also wish we gave Hamling an opportunity in defence when he was here because he's a really good defender.
He is a good defender. But apparently now key forward for Sydney, which...
Okay.
Not his strongest suit. That's for sure. But when I saw him up forward several times in this game, I was like, oh, it's real bad. Oh, it's real bad down Sydney way. But Nam, hello. Yep. Where have you guys been?
They've turned the corner.
Yeah.
You're welcome from Fremantle, by the way, because I don't think you would have done it with that game.
That's true.
Look, Cozzy Pickett needs to stop increasing his trade value. I will say that. Stop it, because I was really hoping we could get away with maybe Sean Darcy and, I don't know, Jack Deline, because why not?
What would Melbourne have any use for Sean Darcy?
Carry Gawn's bags. I mean, yes, to be fair, he's already got experience. They did that for 3 hours at the G this year. Followed Max around, gave him little words of encouragement while he lost every ruck contest in recorded history. You're not having Oscar McDonald back, though. I like him. Can we please play him?
Let's do that.
Look, Sydney, this is a disaster. This is an absolute... You talk about Port being a disappointment. Sydney's one I saw coming. Port I didn't. Sydney's one I saw coming. This is getting into embarrassing territory now for the Swans in terms of how ineffective they are as a 3-hour footballing side. Any side that's losing to Sydney this year has to have a real look at that and figure out how have we dropped points to a team in absolute free fall that can't score and can't defend.
This is a bit of a combo breaker, this game. Every single game up until this one had an increasingly higher margin in each game. This one, unfortunately, it had every potential to keep that trend going. Unfortunately, the 17 behinds probably didn't help Melbourne in that cause. But no, this is a shellacking. Like this
is a long way back for the Swans.
Oh yeah, and for the grief we've been giving Melbourne this year, rightfully so at the start of the year, they've obviously shown a lot of good form in the last 5 or so weeks.
Well, I like the fact the players have galvanised and they've.
Yes.
And it's your leaders, it's your Petrarcas, it's your Gords, it's your Olivers. You know, it's guys that we talked about that we were saying, well, they can't rebuild by forcing these players to leave if they wanted to under the collective bargaining agreement, as in Melbourne can't force them to leave if that's what Melbourne wanted. But the senior players have turned it around. Now, there is still issues at Melbourne. Fritsch, Van Rooyen, their forward line is still questionable, despite looking at such a massive total here on the weekend. But, that's a big tick for them. They get a really good litmus test against the Saints in their next game. Sydney, though, I mean, they're up against Adelaide. That's hard to see going any other way.
Yeah, I think Melbourne have been forged by fire this year. They've literally been down at the doldrums, off the field, on the field, and something feels like it's just coming together for them, which is nice to see, and especially Petrarca coming back from big injuries, Oliver coming back from his issues as well. Like, it's nice. It's good to see them do well. It's good to see these teams who have been down in the dumpster crawl out of it, which I think Melbourne are doing a very good job of. Now, well done. Jesse, should we move on?
Yes.
Finish it up.
Am I finishing?
St Kilda, 8.
Oh,
no, I'll finish it up. Sorry.
Okay.
I paused. Yes, I paused. 8-13-61 to the Saints, 12-8-80 to the Suns, who, needed to tick off that win in Melbourne. They've now done that. And I think that kind of solidifies them as a serious contender for this year as well. They haven't played many games up in the Gold Coast, and I think they've got a fair few coming up. So we know they play people first very well as well. 13,000, Jesse. 13,468. Oh, he's got his water bottle. What's he doing?
13,468 water bottles would have made more noise at the game than the St Kilda fans did at any point. Look, we're going to save the talk about Nepo babies and finger pointing and whinging about draft concessions for next week. And we'll do a proper deep dive on that. It'll probably take up more time than Liam would like, but I'm going to do that next week. So okay. Deal with it, Liam. Sucks to edit. But I do need to talk about this crowd figure. The lowest Saints crowd, excluding COVID, since 2002. That's not great. This is an indictment on the St Kilda Football Club, is it not? Now, obviously, the Gold Coast aren't going to draw a lot of away fans to their games in Melbourne just because of virtue of who they are. But are you seriously telling me you can't fill out 25% of Marvel?
Well, is it either that the Euro fans just decided we ain't going to win this one, we're not going to bother? Is it too much for? Do they get too much St Kilda through the year?
I mean,
they just can't be...
too much St Kilda came in about the 1870s. And that's where we really should have diverted. You've got the MCG there on your little graphic name. It is Marvel.
I will change it.
But not even a quarter of the capacity of Marvel Stadium. That is a... So
it was empty.
But, we talk about Melbourne getting bad attendances. At least they get 25K, usually as a floor, which is 25% of the stadium. They have to fill out 100,000 seats. Now, 40,000 seats is a big difference. This is bad. But we will talk about this. We will pause this for next week because I have a few points I want to make about this broader conversation involving St Kilda versus...
I can't wait for that.
It's going to be so much fun.
I can't wait for that.
But Gold Coast keep winning. And this is a game where I don't feel like they were really in too much danger. I mean, St Kilda never led at any point. Euro never led at any point during the match. It's hard going through past and future tense, so I apologise. I'm flip-flopping through the tenses. Euro never led at any stage during this match. They were never, I think, a serious threat. And the Suns had them at arm's length for the majority of this game. That's what they needed to do. They needed to win at Marvel. They needed to tick off the fact they can beat banana peel sides because they didn't beat Richmond when they came down here earlier this season. Roll on Suns. It's that simple.
Yep. No, I don't think there's too much to say here. I mean, I think a few weeks ago I thought St Kilda were like a form team, and then you had to very gently remind me, which is not in your MO, but you did, that they hadn't won very many games. I was like, haven't they? I think on the back of that Freo drubbing, I just figured they were in a good spot. But No, they're not doing so well, the Saints. But it's good to see the Suns
roll
on.
They've almost won their last 7 now because they lost 3 in a bounce coming into the Fremantle game.
Yep.
And they're currently 1 from their last 5, which is including that Fremantle game. So I'm pretty sure they've won their last 7 now. Or at the very least won their last 6. They've been in bad form.
Yeah. But no, always good to see the Suns doing well.
That includes a loss to West Coast as well, or Warwick Marrowa, as it were.
True.
So that's not good. And look, that may account for the poor attendance as well, coming in off that 100%. Loss. But
if your team's not winning, people aren't going to go, which I don't necessarily agree with because, obviously over here, we go to all the games regardless of how
I can't talk. I didn't go on Saturday night for the first time.
You had a good reason.
But the first time in 3 years. So I think if we're going to give someone a spell.
Listen, you had a good reason. It's okay.
Thank you.
But let's wrap it up, Jesse. Not much more to say about this one. Send the lovely people home.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. If you are on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. They're little intangible things that do really help us get our reach out there. So make sure everyone else can see our deep dives, especially for next week, because I have a feeling if it reaches the wrong audience, there's going to be lots of Cross and Kilda supporters in our comments. If it reaches the right audience, we can all have an actual, legitimate, fair and balanced conversation about father, sons, and academies that isn't just screeching into the void about how unfair the system is. If you're on one of our preferred podcasting platforms, a review is also much appreciated. Instagram as well, follow down there at cmperfect_AFL. But the best type of review you can give us is word of mouth. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell the empty chip wrapper next to your Marvel Stadium because there's no one else around to tell if you're at a Euro game. So you may as well just shout into the void until someone hears that you watch this show. Make sure you tune into Just the Tips over on YouTube if you're not there already. We'll see you next time on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast.
Oh, he's done it again. Bye, everybody.